Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the week's final episode of the morning meeting. Sean, Dan, and I will take you through the day, a la the television network news division's morning meetings, in which the bureaus from around the world report in about what's going on. As during the Cold War, we almost always start with the president's schedule, and we'll do that in just a moment. After that, we'll kick things around, and then we'd love your participation. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. If you're in the YouTube or you're in the X thing, don't put smack in the chat. That's all I have to say about that, because peace, love, and understanding is what we are all about. Gentlemen, good morning. Let's get right to the schedule. And I have a bunch of elements to show you on what remains our top story, which is the prospect of America joining Israel in a kinetic action against Iran. The president today, 11 o'clock on his schedule, a national security briefing, closed press. We didn't hear from him yesterday, except on the social medias. And then he heads to Bedminster. He's got a MAGA Inc. dinner tonight at Bedminster in the middle of the beautiful New Jersey countryside. Don't know what the vice president's doing today. And there's not much on the schedule, I have to say. Congress is out, and we do have activity in Geneva. Let's show that, Paul, if we could. Already seen arrivals from the foreign ministers of some big European powers and the Iranian foreign minister. Here's the arrival of the German minister, I believe. Am I correct about that? I think so.
Yes.
And the Security Council is in at 10, right as we go off the air. Emergency meeting on Iran. And then at 3 o'clock, they're meeting on Russia, Ukraine. I'm sure they'll get a lot done there. All right, so that's the as we say in Britain, that's the schedule. Speaking of Britain, here is a tweet from Mr. Lammy, the British Foreign Secretary, 103, who met with Marco Rubio yesterday for quite some time, and Mr. Witkoff, and then jetted over to Geneva. The situation in the Middle East remains perilous. We are determined that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. Meeting with Rubio and Witkoff in the White House today, we discussed how a deal could avoid a deepening conflict. A window now exists within the next 2 weeks to achieve a diplomatic solution. The Europeans, in short, prefer jaw to war. And the president's fortnight pause, some people, including David Sanger of the New York Times, potentially see that as a misdirection and believe there could be an attack during the 2 weeks, maybe even this weekend. But the president, while some are deriding it as Taco Thursday, is getting praised in some quarters for being deliberate and not taking for granted the effectiveness of the bunker busters. Here is Stanley McChrystal on Squawk Box 106.
It's never wrong to take the time to make sure you've thought something through before you do it. We get enamored with the idea of striking all, bunker busting bombs with the idea that a single strike is going to decide something, and it is not. So this is a long-term decision. We need to figure out what long-term outcome we can achieve with Iran, not just with their nuclear program, but with all the things they've been doing in the region for decades now. And we've been looking at this for decades. We've war-gamed potential scenarios about dealing with Iran's nuclear capability for years and years and years. But taking 2 weeks, there's no hurry right now. Israel has clearly created a new opportunity by weakening Iranian air defenses. But the reality is that will stay for a while. And even if they then do a strike with American aircraft, that doesn't end it. There's going to be a day after, and we need to think about what we're going to do and how we'll navigate that.
McChrystal's point of view represents that of many sober military analysts, retired military officials, and at least some of the people advising President Trump. AIPAC, the Washington lobbyists on behalf of Israel and Americans who care about Israel, has a lot of money, and occasionally they spend it on TV ads. Don't know where this is airing besides the DC area, if anywhere, but here's a new TV spot from AIPAC in support of the Trump and Netanyahu alliance. This is 108, please.
It's probably airing at
Iran
bedtime.
cannot have a nuclear weapon.
From day one, President Trump has been clear.
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before.
Sometimes you have to take a stand against evil, and that's what President Trump understands. And we appreciate, deeply appreciate, the help we're getting from the United States of America.
Iran is not winning this war.
President Trump's strength is making the world safer, standing with our friends. standing up to
All right, cut off a little bit there abruptly, but you get the point. Dan, where do you think the president's fortnight timetable leaves things inside his head and for the actions of the United States?
Yeah, I agree with General McChrystal, and actually said something similar on X yesterday. Look, I think he's appropriately nervous. He cannot control and kind of bend the Middle East.
Maybe let's go with cautious or prudent.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I mean, I think he's
Not
nervous.
nervous. He's
No,
not
I think
nervous.
he is. Like, this could look. We all, I think, now agree at the end of the week that the big question is really what comes after if they bomb, right? That is where I think he is asking. It's being reported a lot of questions. They're trying to game out. You know, McChrystal said the same thing here. I think he is nervous. He is cautious, right? You don't know what's going to come of this, and so I think he's doing the right thing. There is no rush to do it today versus in 2 weeks necessarily. And I actually do applaud him. I worry that a lot of U.S. politicians would not have the balls to stand up to the pressure from Netanyahu and kind of domestic politics, like you got to be with Israel. And I think he's doing the right thing to say, like, I'll make the decision when I make the decision. That's good.
Sean, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't share the use of some of those adverbs, adjectives in terms of his state of mind. I think this is what I've been saying all week. He does not want war. He wants them not to have a bomb, and he wants or nuclear capabilities, and he wants to prevent war. That's it, full stop. And part of what yesterday was, there's two things going on. One is the subtle display of military might by flying certain planes publicly, positioning certain assets in a way that everybody knows we're ready to go. We've got it. We can do it. But at the same time, making it clear that, like, you still have an out. You have an opportunity to do it the right way. And I think he's doing exactly that. The second piece I would say that continues to come out and is the emerging consensus. I would say there's definitely some right and left pieces or right and further right pieces of the MAGA world. But I think there is general consensus that dropping a bomb, taking out nuclear capabilities, is not anti-America first. It's the follow-on force where people have a problem. And so I think that's where President Trump is trying to figure out, can I thread this needle? He bought himself 2 weeks. I do agree that the 2 weeks just means anything can happen within. Yeah. It's sort of it's funny how he threw a shiny nickel out, like, I'll decide within 2 weeks. And everybody kind of was like, okay, 2 weeks. Like, does that mean that he's got 2 weeks? Is that at the end of 2 weeks, he's going to make it? I mean, like, he really did sort of change the narrative. And I don't think anyone has a clear understanding of what that really meant. Yeah. Did he just mean something could happen within that window, that at the end of it, I will bomb if they haven't done something, that I will, I mean, to me, what was funny is just, again, everybody bought in on the bait that he put on the lure, and no one looked up.
I think that Politico, after being part of the hysterical mob, talking about the divisions within MAGA, today gets it right, which is Bannon, who had lunch with the president yesterday, and Charlie Kirk both now are saying, we trust the president. He's not going to get us into a ground war. If he thinks America first is bombing, great. We're behind that. Thanks to many of you who pointed out that because of my obsession with 1980s rock, I've been saying B-52s on this program. The B-2s, there's the question of whether they will actually work. And we talked yesterday about the flight time. Do either of you think it's possible that he will do an attack in the 2 weeks without any change? In other words, this was simply meant to throw the Iranians off? Either of you think that?
Well, that's, I don't want to get ahead of the show because we've got a segment coming up, what to look for. But I will say, if Iran missteps at all in these 2 weeks, then those planes are airborne, baby.
Oh, okay. I think it's very possible. And somebody on 2-Way Tonight last night said, maybe watch for when the markets close and do it over the weekend to try to see if you can contain the fallout in oil prices and everything else.
Right. The other thing that's going on is that there's less focus on what Israel's actually accomplishing on the ground. You recall that in the early days, 4 days ago, they were giving regular readouts about what they were destroying and who they were killing. And there's much less of that. And part of that is because the media is now focused on the bright, shiny object that the president's thrown out. So, Sean, Where would you think, or where do you know Bibi's head is at in terms of the 2-week pause? Is that something that's troubling the Israelis or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just like, okay, 2 weeks is up, 2 weeks is up. Like he was that I don't think that went over well with him at all. And I think he's going to literally, he's noted that he talks to the president every day. I think he's just going to keep trying to throw ammunition and say, guess what? They did this, or this is the perfect time, or hey, what are you doing tomorrow at noon? That's a perfect time to order a strike. Like he's just going to keep peppering him. This was not what he wanted to see.
All right, Dan, I want your analysis of the body language, word choice, and tone of the Israeli finance minister, economic minister, appearing this morning on Squawk Box 105.
Says that he needs 2 weeks to decide what to do and to maybe sort of pursue some kind of diplomatic resolution to this. What's your position? Does that
we
help
understand
you?
the end game. Well, eventually, we will not stop this war until we are sure they do not have those capabilities. Because if they have those capabilities, they demonstrated that they will use them. If the proxies work, they used them in October 7. We cannot allow that again. They used hundreds of ballistic missiles targeting at Israel, and unfortunately, we saw where also Israeli citizens have been, innocent civilians have been killed. You saw the attack on the hospital today. And we want to make sure that they never have nukes. We believe them, that they mean to use those nukes to eliminate Israel. We will not let that happen. So regardless if the U.S. joins us, and we'd, of course, be very happy to, but that's President Trump's decision to make, we are committed to the same, to the goals eventually. We have no choice but to make sure they don't have those capabilities.
Dan, thoughts on that?
Well, I think he had a little bit of irritation in his voice, I thought. And I think to Sean's point, Bibi is going to keep flattering Trump. Like I think, Mark, you've said he's one of the great, U.S. political strategists that there is. He understands to talk about Trump's strength, how great he is, what a wonderful partner, what a great world leader he is. So he's really trying to butter Trump up. The fact that they're running these ads, presumably it's on Fox News. I'm sure it'll be in the Bedminster area here this weekend. And when he speaks to the cameras, Bibi keeps flattering him. But in that, I think Sean's right. I'm sure Israel, if it was up to them, this would have been done yesterday. And I think Israel will not accept a peace deal that keeps the regime in place and some sort of like you move the nuclear material to another country and then you bring it back for peaceful domestic energy consumption. Israel won't trust that for 30 seconds. So, I mean, on some level, whatever Trump does, I think Israel's going to keep their foot on the gas.
See, that's to me the third option, or the second or third option, depending on, which is that at some point Israel says, Mr. President, I get you want more time. We don't have more time. We want to go and do whatever they want to do. And basically just try to get a green light for them to take action, whatever that looks like. But I think that's the one other thing that at some point Netanyahu is going to say, we've waited for you to make a decision. I respect that. I hope you join us, but we're going on Friday or Saturday.
Two more things on this, and then we're going to move to other topics, but please raise your hand if you want to get in on this shortly. One is, as I've told you before, my former editor, Michael Duffy at Time Magazine, told me you got to sell every good piece of content at least 3 times. I've got a piece coming out later today about the Bibi-Trump relationship, and one line from it, I'm going to paraphrase my own work, is Bibi is as fluent in Trump psychology as he is in English. And he totally gets it, His English is very good, by the way, just in case you didn't get that. And the other thing is mixed messages from senior Israeli officials. The president of Israel said yesterday, we're not into regime change. And I think it was the defense minister who said, oh, yeah, regime change is on the table. So I think the Israelis are purposely being opaque there. All right, guys, we're going to do rapid round. The way the news works, every story I'm going to ask you about has within the last 90 days, maybe 30 days, been the biggest story on the planet, or at least in the United States. And I just want your one sentence, either where you think we are or where we think we're going on this. What are you looking for in this area? What's the thing people should be focused on? Here we go. Dan, Russia, Ukraine. Where are we? Where are we going?
Russia's going to take all of Ukraine by the end of the year.
That's a pretty big one. All right, Sean, where are we? Russia, Ukraine.
Who?
Who?
I mean, my point is,
Yeah.
I think that they are like they have now fallen back so far on the top of people's minds.
I understand, but that's true of every one of these stories.
No. But I think that that would mean I think that, to Dan's point, I don't know that they take over all, but I think Russia's going to use this as an opportunity to maybe try to codify some additional forward movement.
Yeah. Although this argues either for or against that point, I don't know which, but the Russian finance minister said yesterday that he thinks Russia is about to go into a recession. All right. Remember when the U.S.-China face-off was the biggest story on earth? Dan, where are we on U.S.-China?
TBD. Does China meet with Europe, and is there a U.S. summit with China, kind of right before or right after?
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, I think that this is in a lull. I think that it'll revive itself shortly. There is definitely a need. As soon as we get some further action in this current situation, that one's going to just bubble back up. But it's in a lull. It's going to come back.
Remember, I'm Johnny One Note. Are the EU leaders going to go see Xi in Beijing this next month or not? All right. Remember when the question of whether we'd have bilateral trade deals struck?
These guys, by the way, the EU is on like a tour of what the US should do. It's like first it was Russia, Ukraine.
Exactly.
Now they're meeting about what we should do with Iran, and then they're going to go talk to China about what the US should do.
They're like a adorable advisory board. Remember the bilateral deals every day. Scott Bess and Howard Lutnick, where are the deals? Dan, where are we on the bilateral deals?
It's a great question, and the thing to watch for, because it's only now about 2.5 weeks away, is does Trump put the tariffs back on here in 2 weeks?
Yeah. Sean?
So here I would keep an eye on 3 things: Canada, Vietnam, and Japan in particular. And then they're going to punt on the tariffs again for probably another 90 days because the conversation is ongoing.
You practically told us that those 3 countries deals were going to be done a couple of weeks ago, and then
I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot there was a small attack in.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Remember, again, don't think back that long ago. The deportation raids in Southern California and the curfew and everything else. The court yesterday ruled, the Court of Appeals, rare that the Ninth Circuit in our modern history has ruled in favor of a Republican, but they ruled unanimously that the president's National Guard moves were, as Bibi and I would say, kosher. Dan, there you go. Trump can command National Guard. And of course, the Supreme Court may eventually hear this. Dan, where are we on deportation, including the hospitality and ag issue? What are you looking for on that matter?
There is, as a Democrat, it's too bad. And this is just speaking politically about what's happening in the Middle East, because this issue is getting really messy for Republicans. There is tension within ICE. There is tension within the White House. Bigly. There's tension within ICE, the White House, and GOP Congress. I will save the rest for winners, losers, and what to watch for.
Ooh, adorable. Also, Sean, where are we on deportation?
That is a tease, Sean.
I think we're actually. I would disagree. I think we're actually getting it kind of sequentially right now, which is there was this obviously move to save some of the hospitality type industry. And then there was a backlash on that. I think it's back in the natural order of where it has to be, meaning the president's going after criminals, big blue cities, right? And then at the bottom, eventually these other folks. And the point being is they'll never get to him. Therefore, he gets to say that he's going after everyone. It'll never happen. So it's a wink and a nod saying, hey, guys, in those industries, chill. We just know that I won't be president when we get to them.
Couldn't agree more. That's 100% correct. And haven't heard anybody say it quite that well. So thank you for that. Caroline yesterday, in rhyming with what Sean just said, talked about criminals. All right. Remember when reconciliation was a big deal? And of course it still is. We talk about this every day this week, I think. But Dan, where are you rising bear, rising bull on the passage?
I think this is where
you're still on mortal luck.
Yeah, it's good for the GOP. Mortal lock. It's going to happen.
Sean?
I will continue to maintain, like, the train if you've ever taken the Amtrak and you're going through like New Haven on the Northeast corridor where it slows down, like that's where we are.
It goes to a crawl around New Haven. Like you think it might be stopped. It's going so slowly.
So that's where we are. The train is still on the track, technically moving, but it's not pretty.
I haven't taken the train between Boston and New York for a long time because of the New Haven thing.
It's somebody who grew up in New Haven, it slows because it's so beautiful. You just want to see out the window. All the urban blight.
I will be a broken record on this one too, which is I want Scott Bessent to set the X date, because until he does that, this thing's not going to pass.
Why would you? Oh, well, that to me, that he won't do that. I think I would actually venture to guess that he never will publicly say it.
Oh my goodness. I never bet on things I cover, but I will bet you he does. They're going to have to say it to get the House passage.
Whenever Susie Wiles wants that date, that's what it'll be.
That's when magically he
and
stops
he
flying.
will salute.
That's the day when he runs out of finding quarters under the sofa cushions in the Treasury Department. All right, this one arguably does not belong on the list because it's never been the biggest story, except for maybe 2 hours. But Dan, where the president delayed the TikTok decision again? How is that going to eventually resolve itself?
James clearly does not have TikTok yet, because you would not say this is not a big story if James had.
No, it's
TikTok.
a big story, but it wasn't a story on the magnitude of the others.
I'm teasing. They are never going to let that thing go through. There is bipartisan agreement, primarily children, kids.
Bipartisan, meaning they're never going to ban TikTok. No. Sean?
I think this.
Well, but Dan, is somebody going to buy it? Who's going to control it?
They're going to keep that. I mean, who knows?
The Chi-Coms? The Chi-Coms will keep it?
Maybe Oracle and News Corp buy it.
Okay, Sean.
Now, see, this is to me that I'll lead backwards. China doesn't want to sell it, so it's not a question of who buys it. Oracle could buy it today. There's a bunch of,
a lot of people want to buy it.
He's got a team that wants to buy it. There's a bunch of buyers, but China doesn't want to sell it. I look at this like vapes. Well, no, but what I'm saying is, if you go back in the 2020 election, there was a lot of the president is very anti-smoking, he understands, and the campaign came to him with data and said, if you do this, young people walk. I think to your point, like, everybody understands that TikTok is a bad thing, both in terms of what it does to kids' minds and the information flows, and it's a massive tool of the communist Chinese government. But I think there's a recognition of the political constituency that utilizes it and whatever, and therefore they will continue to find ways to punt this down the road, knowing that Congress will never do anything.
Same with pot and the president and pot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, those of you interested in who the Democrats will nominate for president in 2028 and see the giant vacuum, I'm here to tell you, with a giant dollop of overstatement, we have found the nominee of the Democratic Party in 2028 via a Washington Post story, which I don't even think references the presidential campaign. Here's a headline. This is 109. Washington Post story about three pals. Okay. These are three Democratic politicians who all got involved when Donald Trump was president. Mikey Sherrill, who's going to be the governor of New Jersey, almost certainly. Abigail Spanberger, who's going to be the governor of Virginia, almost certainly.
No.
Almost certainly.
Formally object. I formally object.
And Alyssa Slotkin, who is now senator from Michigan.
By the way, just technical point. Noah, Paul, somebody please clip this moment right now. Put it in the morning meeting archive to come out in the.
Sean, your nominee is not as good a candidate as the Democrat.
I don't care how good or not good, but I'm just telling you.
We'll see. Anyway, Virginia is a purple state, and they have a Republican governor now, so I think it'll be her. In any event, the New Washington Post story talks about what pals they are. They all have pre-electoral politics, national security experience at the CIA or in the military. They're all whip smart, and the donors will love them. And so when I floated this morning in my newsletter the possibility that one of these three women would be the nominee, I got an email from a Democratic donor who said this. When I said the donors would swoon over them, this person's partial to soon-to-be Governor Sherrill. I would be one of those swooning donors that you mentioned. A moderate with her resume would be formidable. I've hired a lot of Naval Academy graduates, and each one performed magnificently. Sean, do you find those trio of women to be formidable as potential nominees for the Democratic Party?
They're all intriguing. They've got great resumes. I think Slotkin's still young and has a lot. I've watched her. She did that back and forth with Hegseth in the hearing the other day. Yeah. She's got a great. We've talked about this before, like the difference between good paper and good practice, and I think a lot of them good on paper. They need some time in the batting cages to take some swings. I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't know that they can get there in time for 2028 though. And by the way, look, I do. It's not a question of the how Winsome's campaign is going. I do think that the trend in Virginia, there's a bunch of things at play, but I don't see how Abigail Spanberger could win and then turn around and run.
Well, she's term limited for one thing. Look, I'm not sure that
Doug Wilder did it back in the day,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. I'm overstating the case, of course, but I think one of them could well be on the ticket, maybe the bottom of the ticket.
Oh,
But
that's a whole nother. Yeah,
but
I don't.
Dan, all three of them, we all know people in politics who are not impressive, not intellectual heavyweights, not serious people. These are three serious people, all of whom are also charismatic and whip smart about politics as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like all three of these people. I worked with them here and there when I ran government relations for a company, spent time with them. I am very impressed. I thought at least Slotkin did great in the State of the Union or whatever that was, the president's address when she did the response. I think all things considered, she did very well. She is talking about taking on the base and like they've kind of lost it. She's very public about that. I happen to know somebody who is a senior advisor to one of these three. I will not name them. And I know that at least one of them is thinking very seriously about if they were to win, they would run. They are going to look at running for president. Look, I think actually that this may be the cycle to make that jump, Sean, so soon because J.D. Vance didn't serve very long.
Exactly.
And so the opening, and everyone looks at people like Hillary Clinton who could have gone in 2004 and waited, and you don't know what is going to come tomorrow. So you got an opportunity today, you go for it.
All three are outsiders. None of them speak like politicians. They're all tough. They're all tough.
Here's what I would say. If you just not to get too down the weeds in Virginia, but I think to me, Spanberger would be the one that would rise to the top of that list. Because she's got the cred, she's served in Congress, she'll technically be a governor. So she would have to ensure that they won the lieutenant governor's race, and the Democrats just appointed a nut job as their nominee. So I think they'd have to win she wouldn't leave the seat because then Democrats would freak out that she was going to hand the governorship over to a Republican.
You think they'd freak out about J.D. Vance or the lieutenant governor of Virginia?
No, I mean, but if she were to run, I think that Democrats would hit her in the primary and say, "You're going to turn it over to John."
Why do you say she's the strong? Why do you say she's the strongest of the three? I think she may be the weakest of the three.
I only say that because I think you'd have the credibility of being a chief executive out of the gate and saying, "I run a state."
Well, but so will
Sherrill.
I think Sherrill's the strongest of the three.
And I think she may try to have some corruption headlines of fellow Democrats to show that she's come in, she's cleaning up Trenton, the places that you know what show.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, she easily won a very contested primary with some serious candidates in the
Yeah, absolutely.
Showed a lot of political chops to do that.
And the New York media market will love her.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think going back to the proving ground point, Slotkin's obviously out of cycle, but the two gubernatorial candidates, how they run their campaign. I mean, at best, Citarelli will run a good campaign in Virginia with money. And so the question is, how does she handle attacks? How does she do raising money?
Totally.
And so we'll see. We're watching spring training.
We will. And again, we guys, Sean has said twice now, he's absolutely right. We got to see them do it. It's easy to look attractive, but I will tell you again, they are such serious people, like substantive serious people, and that people can say, "What does it matter in the age of Twitter and TikTok?" It matters. It matters with donors. It matters with elected officials, and it matters with voters. It matters. All right.
Wait,
one more thing.
Hold on one sec, Sean. Can I just ask you a quick question? I know we need to hop. If you're at the RNC and you have Oppo, do you try to rough her up in her New Jersey gubernatorial?
Oh my God, yes. No.
Or you never don't take the shot.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God.
Always take the shot.
Always. One of the biggest mistakes in presidential politics in my career was the failure of Democrats to stop Bush in 98.
George W. Yep.
The failure to stop Bush in 98. Now, Gore went down to Texas and campaigned for Gary Morrow, who was the nominee, but it was massive error to not.
Can I tell you a quick funny story that it's aged a little, so but I remember in the Missouri Senate race, there was a bunch of oppo that everyone had on Claire McCaskill. And they were wondering whether they wanted to wait and hold it because it would blow her out of the water. And then Todd Aiken stepped in it. And it was sort of like you couldn't recover at that point. So whenever you have the shot, you take it.
100%. All right. One more thing about 28. And let me just say, Dan and I tonight on Two Way Tonight at 6 o'clock are going to have our usual group, Alex Castellanos, Nomi Kunst and John Allen to talk about along with all the news of the day, to talk about how 2028 might be impacted by Iran. And here is Wes Moore, Washington Post headline, or Politico rather. Wes Moore did an interview with Politico, and he went once again saying, "I'm not running," meaning he's not currently running, but he may run, saying that President Trump lacks seriousness in dealing with Iran. Again, we'll talk about it tonight, but I'll just say there's an interesting question of how this may all play into the campaign. Campaign's 3 years away, but this could be big enough that it's kind of a litmus as to how you handle it. All right.
So I will say this on Wes Moore. I've never thought this strategy works, but I do think that he might be playing a little game of like, please recruit me. Please come and then I wasn't going to run, but everybody asked me to.
Yeah. I keep getting
Well, and
asked.
I also just
People
think,
are saying,
yeah, take out the 3 women that we just spoke about. If you look at Whitmer and Shapiro and Brashear and Cory Booker, none of them have military experience. So I think that it was a genius move, whatever you think of the substance of it. He is positioning himself to kind of be in there, Sean, to your point, to maybe, if drafted, I will serve.
Yeah, I may draft myself.
Okay, we're going to get to your questions in a moment. So please, if you'd like to be part of the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Now, smack in the chat, Sean, winner of the week.
My winner of the week is patriotism. It didn't get a lot of play this week. President Trump planted 2 flagpoles, and this comes on the heels of the Army's 250th. When we're trying, I think that there's an attempt to revive some bipartisan love of the country, and so I was going to wait till 4th of July, but take the shot when you have it. I thought this week there was an attempt to really celebrate the country, and I appreciate it.
Dan.
All right, this will be a little awkward after that one, but China, because I think they are watching how Israel is conducting what is really the first real 21st century precision war with kind of all the different facets firing, and they're watching Donald Trump's decision making. And
would that mean that Taiwan is also by default a loser?
Could be, but I went in a different direction.
I know, but I needed to work that in.
Yes.
Winner of the week is Israel. The muted reaction to what they're doing is so different than just, a few months ago with Gaza. Their enemies, their friends, it's all muted, and it's extraordinary. Gives them much more freedom. They've never been very good. I don't understand why at the PR of what goes on, the criticism they get during armed conflicts. Saw that in Gaza. This is as free a ride as they've had in modern history.
But the dynamic, Mark, that you bring up is so worth like a whole separate show. Think about this. October 7th, they get shelled. Innocent people are killed and taken hostage, and the world comes out against them.
Correct.
Back, and then they go on the offense and go after Israel, and everyone's like, yeah, we should have a discussion about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, they're killing civilians. They're not talking about it, but they're killing civilians. But I agree with you. It's a massive topic. I can explain it somewhat, but I can't explain completely. But I do know they're the winner of the week. Sean, loser of the week.
It was a tough week for that. I had Jim Acosta earlier in the week from some comments he made. Yesterday, the LA Dodgers came in very strong for a potential winner of the week or loser of the week. And I know they were going to win the loser of the week. But overall, based on the week that they've had, I got to give Democrats the loser of the week. They have failed to get a comprehensive strategy, whether it's the turmoil at the DNC, the muted response of Chuck Schumer, the ability not to actually attend a hearing where they could have gone on the offense. Like, they are literally rudderless, and they don't have anyone to actually put their hand on the tiller anymore. It's not even that the leaders are bad. I don't know who's possibly running the show anymore.
Dan.
As depressing as that is, let's go back to Spanberger, Sherrill, and Slotkin, and then I get optimistic again. My loser of the week, Stephen Miller, because they're never going to deport the 14 million other people. Sean, you said it. They're going to kick the can down the road. J.D. Vance will not do it either if he were president. Reality bites. Stephen Miller. Is the loser
Okay,
of the
so
week.
first, I will just respectfully disagree with the gentleman from New York because this month alone there has been zero encounters like that they've had at the border. It was 64,000 a year ago. The Trump administration and Stephen Miller deserve a ton of credit for securing the border and keeping this country safe.
Yeah.
The manner in which they deport people in this country illegally going forward, I think it's sort of like the second prize. But they have already achieved.
Whoa.
Yeah.
He didn't campaign 15 through 24 on. I'm going to close the border and maybe we'll get to the other people. But
no. It's the priority in which you do it. I think that they are very excited and proud about what they do.
Stephen's too powerful to be named loser of the week.
oh,
so.
come on. That's fun. You're always saying he's the winner. He's the loser for this.
Okay, all good. The Ayatollah, I don't even need to explain it. Sean, what are you looking for this weekend?
Although he could be the winner because he's alive still.
Just you wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Sean.
I'm looking for escalation. That to me is the name of the game. If we have a possibility of a preemptive strike, but I think what Iran does over the weekend is going to be something that I'm looking for.
Dan.
Indiana Pacers 3-point shooting. They have not had a game where they've gone off yet. As a Nick, 2 years in a row, by God, so many games where they just killed us because they couldn't miss. Game 7, I am watching it Sunday night.
Are we still playing basketball? It's baseball season.
I thought I had said Pacers in 6. I'll turn out to be one game off. They'll win Game 7 for the exact reason Dan says. They've gotten the series to Game 7 without having one of their crazy 3-point nights.
Yep.
So that's correct. All right, now we go to your questions, your comments, your reflections, your open disregard for Dan's feelings. Whatever it is you want to do, now's the opportunity. Please raise your hand. We'll bring you in. Tell us what's on your mind. And Dan, as you know, I am a sucker, most of all, for an adorable baby.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kim Anderson's backdrop, because that is spectacular.
That could be up next. Daryl, welcome in. Daryl, you're going to have to turn the baby around. You have to give us a peek. Oh, my goodness. Oh, look at that. Oh.
He's 6 weeks old today.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Happy birthday, little man. What's his name?
Well, I couldn't decide on Dan or Mark or Sean, so I went with Theodore Ulysses.
Theodore Ulysses. That is a cute little man.
That's my middle name.
Daryl, welcome in. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I just want to call out Sean. Stop trying to manufacture consent for this bombing campaign in Iran. America First is not for dropping a bomb. Charlie Kirk does not represent America First, and neither do you. If you think that, you need a wake-up call.
So wait, all right. First of all, I don't ever pretend to represent America First.
Good.
But I have spent plenty of time around the president to understand. I believe he is the leader of America First. So explain to me
where. We'll see about that.
Huh?
We'll see about that, depending on what he does.
Oh, well, okay. So tell me what part of the analysis you disagree with.
You know, we say no smack in the chat, but smack on the show apparently is okay a little bit.
By the way,
it's just principled and respectful. He didn't.
I'm your most controversial guest. Every time I'm on, the chat goes insane, and the YouTube comments are like hundreds of comments.
It's because of the baby, Daryl.
Daryl, don't read the chat, Daryl. Hey, Daryl, can you name any use of American military force in the last 30 years you thought was a good idea?
In the last 30 years?
Yeah.
Maybe Grenada.
Yeah, that's a favorite.
Okay, but Daryl, answer the question. What part of what I have explained do you think is not accurate?
What specifically? America First? Like, we're not for bombing Iran, man. Like, it's not going to stop there. You guys think it's going to be some like rosy thing, like, oh, we're going to just drop a few bunker busters, and we're going to walk away. Like, get out of here, man. It's just ridiculous. You guys are trying to paint a rosy picture of what's going to happen. Iran can deal a lot of damage. What if they shut down the Strait of Hormuz? What's that going to do to inflation here in this country?
Daryl, did you oppose President Trump's elimination of Soleimani?
I think it was very provocative, and I think in the end, it got us to where we are today.
So it was a bad idea?
I think in the end, yes. Now, you could say, oh, the guy was in Iraq and he was responsible for killing Americans. I think there's some justification there.
How about the killing of bin Laden?
Well, what we should have done, instead of invading Afghanistan, we should have just killed bin Laden.
But Daryl, was it a good idea for the U.S. military to kill bin Laden?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a good idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Daryl, come back on the 7-week anniversary, the 7-week birthday, please. We want like a week by
I'll be
week
back.
shot.
Don't worry,
All right.
I'll be back.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Good to see you. All right. Stand by. Barry, welcome in. Thank you for joining from Washington State. What's on your mind this morning?
There we go. Technology. Good morning. So I have kind of a personal question, but sometimes, so I've been lucky enough to come on here several times, and I always want to know how things work. So my son and his girlfriend are stuck in Israel. They went for my son's dad's 60th birthday. They were supposed to fly home the Saturday after this started. So from where I sit, I'm in Washington State. That's where my son lives. She's from Canada, and her family has been in touch with the Canadian government. They're well aware. They are calling her parents. They're giving them updates. My son has called every Washington State representative. He's registered on the State Department website. Crickets.
Has
Like
he tried
nothing.
has he tried to get on a
Trying to
ship?
get home. Yeah.
Tried to get on a
They have
ship?
they have a reservation for, let's see, the 27th. But then making a flight from Cyprus back to Europe is it's not happening yet. Anyway, when I see this flight, I think it was an organization called Grable that Ron DeSantis has been working with that already brought people back to Florida. And here in Washington, I'm like, go through the channels. And there's nothing, there's been no communication to him, to me, I've tried to work every connection. So on the backside, I don't know, I feel like I'm being punished being in a Democratic state that doesn't agree with what the Trump administration is doing. Is that wrong to think that way?
No, there are other people having trouble getting out, but he should be able to get out. He should be able to get on a ship today.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they would punish a U.S. citizen stranded
I'm just
in
not
Israel.
I'm not getting anywhere. They're like, well, he made the choice to go to Israel. It was the one thing that I heard back from, I hate to say, sound like an intern, but like on the back channels, I just haven't heard anybody really talking about the 40,000 Americans that are in Israel on tourist visas right now.
I think the New York Times or somebody had something today about people are still there.
Yeah.
I'll just say I don't put a lot past the Trump administration. I don't think they'd go there on this. I just don't think so.
They don't have time. They don't have time to do it.
That's way too complicated to figure out at a time like this.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, let's just real quick.
By the way, it's almost treasonous. So
yeah, I mean, but have you? So you've contacted the two Washington senators / members of Congress that you're
Everyone. I've contacted everyone. Maria Cantwell's office. I've contacted Patty Murray's office. I've contacted Adam Smith's office. I have not gotten a phone call back.
Okay, so again, here's what I would just say to you, just because this is important, and I'm not. There's two entities at play here. Like there's the State Department who could help, do. And there's not, I mean, there's a State Department warning, whatever, so that they should have most of that is handled by career folks, right? So this is agnostic. But from what you're describing, you have a bigger problem with your own representatives not getting back to you. So before we get to the Trump administration, the idea that Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell and Adam Smith are not getting back to you is
Barry,
are they getting back to you, or are they saying,
Barry, if I were you, there's two things I would do if you're close enough. One is I would go to the district office of one of the senators.
Yeah, that's where I'm going today because it was closed yesterday for June 3rd.
Is there an Israeli consulate in Seattle?
There is.
I'd go there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would physically go. That's what I would do. I'd physically go to those two places.
Well, he's an adult. He's in his 30s. I mean, he's working all the channels too. But when she's getting calls from the Canadian government. Her parents are. She's not. On a daily basis, checking on her, and I'm getting bupkis. It's just really infuriating.
Barry, you and your son live in Washington?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just looked up. Neither of them are on the Senate Foreign Relations. Mark's right. Go into that office. That is what they're there for.
Okay.
Constituent service.
And Barry, I'm gonna give you one more tip.
Yeah.
Bring some fresh fruit and some cookies with you.
Oh, I will.
Yeah. Okay. Keep us posted.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Tim, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, Sean and Dan.
Hey guys, how are you? Can you
Good,
hear
how are
me?
Great, thank you.
you?
Yes, sir.
Pretty good. I think it's my third time being on the show,
Great
and
to have you back.
want to congratulate you, Dan. You are the most articulate guy on the air, and
Oh,
and a lot of
other
people
than
that
Mark
just
Halperin and Sean Spicer. Yes.
yeah, and also I have to say, Mark, Dan, I love you, but Mark, that's what I meant to say. Mark, you are the most articulate man on the air with a soothing voice and an incredible talent for moderating the conversation, and just wanted to say that.
Thank you, sir.
So listen,
How
guys,
are you guys related?
Sean, I'm sorry to leave you in the cold, but all three of you guys. I do very rarely do things habitually. I've listened to the show every single day since before the election. So I just, I'm one of those that really congratulate you on having an excellent platform.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask because it's kind of in line with what Daryl was bringing up earlier. An observation to start with that it's concerning that the conflation, I think, with anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, in the sense that I can be very strongly against the Bibi Netanyahu-led government and how they've conducted themselves, and still be a friend of Israel. And I think the territory where that becomes taboo is a little bit kind of like the new wokeness of that we're living right now. That I think that a lot of people are maybe a little bit silent to speak out because they just don't agree with this government and the way that they've conducted themselves. And yet they're still very much a friend of the Jewish people. And so my question is, with that in mind, with Bibi and the piece, Mark, that you recommended with the New York Times, that talked about how Trump's, his changing perspective on the situation. And it really went into detail about how really Netanyahu kind of pulled a fast one. Or at the very least did not respect Trump's wishes not to strike. And so my question is that if it came out that Israel, in line with what Tulsi Gabbard has said in her testimony before Congress, that Iran isn't really that much closer to a nuclear weapon, that even as potentially that they don't really have designs as much to build one with the urgency, certainly that Netanyahu has claimed, would that and should that change the calculus about our support for Israel in this? And because then ultimately, is it just about regime change in Iran and not really about protecting this urgent threat?
Well framed, Sean.
So I have tonight on the show Robert O'Brien, who was Trump's last national security advisor, very intimately on top of the situation, and that's obviously an issue that I'm going to cover with him. I think that the intel is definitely a lot stronger now. With the Israel has recovered through a lot of different means actual intelligence about where some of the nuclear capabilities are. There is a difference, especially vis-a-vis Iraq and WMD. It's not just someone saying they have capabilities or denying it. It's actually kind of inverse. Before, Saddam would brag about WMD, and they probably didn't have it. With respect to Israel, I mean, with Iran, we know through intelligence that they do have it. They're not hiding it. They actually have enriched uranium. The question is, to what degree beyond commercial grade? And they're like, no, we're not doing any of that. So it's not the difference in this situation is whether or not they're trying to take the uranium they're enriching and use it for weaponry purposes as opposed to commercial. And I think so to me, it's almost like we know that they have the ability. It's just a question of how far along are they in developing it. That to me is a much different argument than we've ever dealt with in the past.
Dan.
I mean, look, it's always good to be skeptical and ask tough questions, right? There's a burden of proof to some extent when you're are invading another country and attacking it. I happen to believe, as Sean said, that the Israelis are right, that Iran is clearly trying to achieve a nuclear weapon. But you're right to ask questions, and I think it's a smart difference to point out between being anti-Israel and anti-Netanyahu, for lack of a better term.
Tim, thank you. Grateful to you for coming on and for your kind words about the show.
Thank
you. Sorry. Kind of screwed that up. Okay. Craig was so early today raising his hand. Craig,
Dan,
welcome
I
in.
don't know. Dan's going with the physical, by the way. I don't. There's something. I may regret that, but Dan is definitely doing.
Craig, big build up. This is going to be the best question of the week.
Hopefully.
Do it.
I'm particularly interested in what Sean thinks about this. I don't know if you guys talked about it yesterday, and I don't know if I'm trying to figure out if I'm biased or not, because I really don't want to go to war with Iran. So I'm much more sympathetic to what Bannon and Tucker are saying than what Ted Cruz was saying. And how impactful do you think that interview with Ted Cruz was on Tucker Carlson? I think that Tucker Carlson completely embarrassed him, but I don't know if I'm just biased because I see a lot of people saying that it's his questioning about what's the population of Iran, all these specifics was ridiculous. I don't think it is because I think it's very, even if he said like, oh, it's 100 million or 80 million, he didn't even get in the ballpark of how big it is. And obviously Iran's different from attacking Gaza, and Iran's different from attacking, it's a huge country with a huge army. Am I biased for thinking that Tucker Carlson kind of completely beat Ted Cruz in that debate, and that interview is actually pretty impactful and revealing?
Great question. Dan.
Oh, I think he asked Sean that question, but
All of you, I guess.
Thank you.
Look,
sorry.
No, please
Sean,
go. Please.
Interested in what Sean's thinks because it's in the Republican Party.
Well, I love talking about MAGA dysfunction and division, right? Too much on the Democrats. I'll just say quickly that I think that Tucker did sandbag Cruz. I think Cruz didn't come off looking great either. Tucker's position's pretty clear, and Tucker speaks for a lot of people, Craig, like yourself, who feel the same way. But I think at the end of the day, Tucker so far is getting on board and deferring to Donald Trump and not truly going to war with Trump.
Sean.
Yeah, there's a few questions to unpack here, not a lot of time, so I'll just be quick. I think if you watch the entire episode, that was clearly the highlight. I mean, they pushed that and plugged it for a reason to get people to watch the episode, and it worked. So from a PR and promotional standpoint, he did a great job of doing that. To the merits of the question, I actually do think it's somewhat like a silly question. The reality is either whether they have a population of 500 million or 5, if you have a nuclear capability, that's the fundamental question. Should you take it out or not? The idea of whether they have a large population or not is somewhat irrelevant. Do they have a big military? Do they have counter tactics that they can use against us? Those are the more relevant questions because the size that really doesn't matter. If they have a ton of people, but they can't do anything or strike back, then it's irrelevant. If they have 50,000 people, but all of them are armed to the teeth and trained assassins and, will be part of sleeper cells, then I'd say that matters. So I felt like it was kind of a sandbag of Senator Cruz. And again, if you listen to the whole thing, not to plug Tucker's show, but you get a very different sense of the interview than what they used to promote it.
Yeah. Craig, thank you. Grateful to you. Kim, welcome in. Tell everybody where you are, what's on your mind.
Hi,
Sunny.
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Very nice.
So I don't have a question about any specific topic, but in all of these conversations and meetings, I think about the future, and I'd be interested to hear from all of you. What is the long-term impact, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, to what I would describe as the craziness of the last 15 years? Because it feels to me like, for me, Trump ascending into politics was more about, he touched on the ineffectiveness of Washington and the finger pointing and the do nothing. And whether you like him or not, people voted for him because I do believe something needed to change. But as all of this is going on, and I listen to everyone, I feel like both parties, the extremists, are growing and becoming more vocal, which I don't think is good. You had a professor on the other night about political violence, and 25% of people support political violence or something. Like, that is like, oh my God. And we saw it in Minnesota. And I just wonder for the future, Trump will be gone at some time. And the focus on, the flooding the zone, and then the media responds to it, and Democrat, like, it's so frustrating because I do believe the issue around Iran is really real, right? And there's a lot of discussion, and I feel like it is the one thing where Trump is thinking about it and understands the severity of it and the implications of it. And a strong leader ultimately makes a decision, and some people are going to like it and some aren't, right? And it just feels to me like when he's gone, and how is anything truly going to change in Washington, which is what concerns me the most, because I feel like Democrats right now, nothing Trump does, nothing about the Republicans is good. And the same with the Republicans. And listening to people like Richie Torres or Ro Khanna who talk about needing to compromise, which is part of life. And so I tell you, you've got to learn to find some common ground. Feels like it exists nowhere. So my concern, and not just for me, because I'm 60 years old, my life is at the end, but my kids and my grandkids, hopefully, what does that mean? And one of the most powerful things for me, Mark, was when you had on the person that did all the little video clips of new people coming into Washington. And listening and watching those, it's like, here are people who I believe want to do what's right. And are they just bound to become like what I feel like everybody in Washington has become? Just, we're in this camp and we're not forced to do anything because we're just going to point fingers, and this is where we are. And it impacts real people like us.
Yeah.
Every
Kim,
day.
you speak for tens of millions, and I'll warn our affiliates, we're going to run at least a little bit over because you've asked a very big question. We'll answer it in brief, but it's a theme we'll come back to. So thank you for all of that. Well said. Sean.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the time, I'll be brief and just say, unfortunately, I think that this is the system. You come to Washington, people, I want to do, everyone comes with the greatest intentions. But this is why I thought DOGE was so important. Every year, people talk about government waste and inefficiency, the debt, the deficit, and then do absolutely nothing, nada, whatever. And at some point, the chickens come home to roost. Like, we have big problems in this country. It didn't get any coverage this week. Medicare and Social Security report came out, 2 days ago, showing that the bankruptcy of both of those programs is even more imminent than it was a year ago. It's escalating. And yet we're sitting around, and Mark and I, we've talked about this. Politicians will say, I'm protecting Social Security. You're not protecting it. You're defending its bankruptcy, because that's what's happening right now. There are big issues that we're facing domestically. And then, as I've said before, you've heard me over and over again talk about the existential threat that China faces. We went through a pandemic and we came out the other end buying more crap from China than we should, right? We didn't learn anything. We didn't realize our dependency on them. In fact, we became more dependent on them than ever before. So I just, unfortunately, the only answer is that it takes a president to lead that effort, whether it's, Republican or Democrat, but the system is strong, the swamp is deep, and it takes some political fortitude to actually make change. So I would say that we're making some moves around the edges, but a lot more could be done.
Kim, I think it's a fantastic question, because I think that while you talk about the change that Trump brought, I think you have to go back to the substance of his message. If there's one takeaway that everyone, Democrats, Republicans, have, is that Trump had a set of ideas that the establishment in both parties thought were crazy, right? It was all about, how do we give citizenship or a pathway to citizenship for immigrants? Free trade was just a given, right? It was like that's just the way the world is. Foreign intervention, right? All the wars, both parties were kind of in agreement. They may not like it, but we have to do it. Trump came along with a series of ideas that I think showed people how much they're frustrated with the status quo and how much they want change. The style in which he operates, I don't think is really replicable, but because it's just him, it's authentically who he is. But I do think that how he communicates, the expectations that you hear from your president on X throughout the day, not just a spokesperson or a cabinet secretary. I think Biden tried to go back to a bygone era, and I think Trump's reelection showed the country did not like that. They want change. They want results. So I actually think he will be historic in that regard, that he will have changed the psychology of what it takes and to be effective. To Sean's point, it probably won't be as much change as fast as you'd like it, because Washington's not set up that way, which, by the way, is kind of a good thing. But I think Trump will be historic in that regard.
Kim, all I'll say is I hope two-way plays a role in changing the dynamic that you're concerned about, and we'll see if we succeed. Thank you, Kim. Sean, you have Robert O'Brien on tonight. Grateful for you, Kim, for coming. Anybody else? Or
No, but the one thing I'll say as a plug for the show is one of the things that I want to bring to light tonight that hasn't gotten a ton of attention, but I hope to get into is the decision-making process. Like we talk a lot about on this show, and everyone else wants to talk about this. And Robert O'Brien was the national security advisor. And so what I want to get from him is an understanding of when you see on his schedule that Trump's going to the Situation Room, what does that look like? How does that process work? How does it flow to him? How does he make a decision? What's asked of him? What's shared with him? So I'm excited about this tonight because I don't think many people can break down how a big decision like this is made other than a former national security advisor. So I look at it, I'm excited for bringing that understanding of the process to light that I think has been missing.
Great, important conversation. Two more two ways today, pending breaking news and a special report. 4 o'clock Eastern time. Ethan Strauss back with another episode of Random Offense. Mike Pesca's his guest, host of The Gist. Please tune in, 4 o'clock Eastern. You can go watch it on twoway.tv to sign up to be part of the conversation live and direct, or if you just want to watch it on YouTube and put smack in the chat, don't do that, or watch it on demand, you can do that on YouTube or on X. And then tonight at 6 o'clock, last two-way tonight of the week, members of the gang who we convene on occasion, no better group to talk about presidential politics in 2028 today in the context of the Iran-Israel news. We'll have all the latest news. And then Dan will join us, and Nomi Kunst, Alex Castellanos, and John Allen will all be part of the conversation. We'd welcome your input, and we'll talk more about the three women Democrats we talked about earlier in this program, as well as everything else related to the possibility that this conflict could play a big role as the Iraq conflict did in the 2008 campaign. Very grateful to you all for being part of the two-way community. Pleased to have another week together, and the three of us will be back ensemble Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Have a good weekend. Go Pacers.
Go Sox.
Yeah.